So hide the waiting room. Okay, so thank you very much everyone for coming along to my little webinar on how to overcoming 3 challenges of designing virtual training, not facilitating it. I'm not going to set myself up as an expert on that. There is obviously a limited amount of time that we've got with this, so I am going to go through 3 of the biggest challenges that I've found people have with designing virtual training and giving you some hints and tips as to how you can overcome them. But obviously in the time we've got, they are just going to be quite top line. So I'm going to be signposting free and low cost resources that you can get if you want more. If you don't want more, that's absolutely fine. It's not going to be one of those webinars where you just have to listen to me telling you how brilliant I am and how you can buy things from me. There's going to be actual tips that you can use as a result of this, but there will be other resources, as I say, signposted if you want more. So let's crack on. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Sheridan Webb and I manage the Training Designers Club. I've just got a few things on here to explain who I am and what I do. In the bottom 2 corners, you will see a Zumba class and cheese and wine, which I always think go really well together. I love my Zumba and I love my cheese and wine, so they do kind of cancel each other out. My closest city is Liverpool. It's my adopted city. As you can tell, I'm not a Scouser, but I'm just on the outskirts of Merseyside. And in the top corner there, you can see me relaxing on the snowy Alps. And in a normal year, I'd be packing right now to get a very early flight tomorrow to go on the annual ski holiday. But alas, this year we're not going, which is a bit of a shame, but there we are. Before I ran the Training Designers Club, which is a community for L&D professionals, I ran Keystone Development and Training for 15 years, which was a bespoke training design consultancy. And I designed bespoke programs for the likes of Costain, Johnson's Workwear, the Ordona Group, Kellogg's, Warburton's, lots of names that you would recognize. I don't do that so much now. My focus is on the Training Designers Club, but it's just to let you know that I've kind of earned my stripes in terms of training design. And I also have a business called Power Hour Training, which is ready-written training materials. So if training design really isn't your thing, you can buy ready-written bite-sized training materials. And I'm slowly but surely converting them into virtual. I've got 50 in total, and I think I've converted 15 to be delivered virtually. So that's just a little bit about me, my background, who I am. But let's move on, because this is not about me, this is about our challenges. So I'm going to ask you to use the chat to let me know on a scale of 1 to 10, how easy do you find designing virtual training, where 1 is an absolute nightmare and 10 is easy peasy, I can do that standing on my head. Cool. Well, could someone put a range in there? Scott, you put a range in. So okay, so we're getting quite a range of answers there, and as I expected, we've got quite a lot of middle ground there. Quite a lot of people sort of finding it okay. I can do it, but I'm perhaps not finding it quite as easy as I want to or hoped I would. And that's understandable, really, because actually it's a whole new learning curve that we're having to go through. And when we've perhaps been designing and delivering face-to-face training, we've perhaps been doing that for a number of years, and we've got to that unconscious competence stage. And all of a sudden we've been thrust out of that, and we've been thrown into a whole new area. So by the looks of those numbers, you're probably at the conscious competence stage, or maybe even, if you're holding yourself to very high standards, a conscious incompetence stage. But you know, it's all part of learning. So what are the 3 big challenges that I'm going to talk to you about that keep coming up over and over? Well, firstly, let me reassure you that this is based on absolutely no scientific research whatsoever. This is just based on conversations that I've had over the last few months with VIP members of the Training Designers Club, and my own experience of making that journey, of going from designing face-to-face stuff to designing virtual stuff. So like everybody else, I found hurdles as well. What we have found is that we can no longer deliver on the hoof. So if you design for yourself to deliver, and you've been doing that for a number of years as a face-to-face trainer or facilitator, what you probably found was that you could just hold a lot of it in your head and bring it to life in the moment. And that's perhaps where you're finding a lot of your frustrations now, that you can't do that. Because we can't fit a square peg into a round hole. We need to actually make a round peg to fit the round hole. But the good news is a lot of this stuff you can actually do, but you've just been doing it so long and so instinctively, you perhaps just need to go back and dust it off, uncover it, maybe look at it in a different way. So that's what I'm going to try and share with you in the next sort of 20 minutes on this. I did mean to say actually that if you want to stay on afterwards for questions, I will happily stay on for 10-15 minutes, but there's such a lot to get through, I won't have time within that half hour. So let's go through these three big challenges. The first one is time, and there's two aspects to time, which I will talk about very briefly. The second is perhaps inevitably tools and tech. We'll perhaps expect to see that one here. And the third one is transfer. So how do we get people to actually do something with the training that we provide virtually? And it's very pleasing to me that they all begin with T. There's something in the training designer about me that likes things to be neat and tidy. So that's very pleasing to me. So let's tackle the first one in two parts, time. Let's start with a question, because this is one of the big challenges, is how long it takes to design a virtual training session. So again, in the chat, how long does it take you to design a 2-hour virtual training session from scratch? If you just want to pop your answers in there. So 20 hours, I'm assuming, Jean, you've said there. Yeah, 8 hours, a full day, 3 to 4 days. It depends on the subject, absolutely, Jasmine, of course it does. A day or so, depends on the content, 15 hours, so that's a day and a half to 2 days. We haven't got anyone saying that they can do it in an hour, which is great. I worry about it when people say, oh, I can design that in an hour. Yeah, so we're looking at sort of anything from 1 to 2 days by the majority of, yeah, Alison, absolutely right, your clients think you can do it in an hour. An hour, if you know, that's interesting, Scott, but not if doing it completely from scratch. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of variables in there, aren't there? And you will have all factored in different things into how long it takes. Some of you will have factored in the research. Some of you will have assumed that you know all of that already, and it's literally just putting the materials together. So it does vary wildly. But I actually think those of you who've said 1 to 2 days, probably not far off if you're going to be designing something from scratch. So yes, so that's something to learn from that. Someone who's been designing training for very many years, it's not so worrying if it's taking you that amount of time. So as I said, there are lots and lots of different variables that we need to take into account when we're designing training, as it did with face-to-face. So if I was designing a workshop that required lots of role plays and case studies, for example, that's going to take a lot longer than if we're doing a lot of facilitation, you know, if we're doing coaching skills or something like that. So what we are covering has a big impact in it. And also, you know, what we need to produce. So are you just looking at some slides and a session guide, or are you looking at delegate workbooks? Are you looking at extra handouts? You know, all the different things that you can create alongside that. We've found that it often does take longer than is expected. We do tend to underestimate, I think, and particularly our clients underestimate, or our stakeholders, if we're employed, can underestimate how long it takes. And the reason for that is that absolutely everything has to be designed in advance. When we were delivering face-to-face, particularly if we were the designer and the deliverer, we could leave things quite loose, because we could rely on our experience to actually bring it to life in the moment, and we could react on the hoof. You can't do that so much now, because as I'm speaking to you, my laptop's in use. I can't quickly whip up another exercise behind the scenes whilst you're doing something else. So we do have to be very, very planned. So if you feel it's taking you too long, I've got three quick tips for you. One is to check that you're not being unrealistic. So if you're spending half a day to design a 2-hour virtual session and you think that's too long, I urge you to think again, because really it's not. So give yourself a break. Don't hold yourself to too high standards on that. It may be that you lack a process. Particularly if you're used to being the subject matter expert and holding it all in your head and facilitating in the moment. You may have once followed a process, but it was so long ago, you can no longer remember what it is. So we're having to go back to actually going through specific stages of training design. And as someone who often designs for other facilitators, that's something that's deeply ingrained within me. So when we actually switched from face-to-face to virtual, I found the difference very, very small because I just followed the exact same process. So maybe that is something that you need to think about. Examine your processes. How exactly are you going about designing your training? And are you following a logical process? Are you making it easy for yourself? And the third question to ask is, are you actually being inefficient in the use of your time? It is possible. What I've found, particularly with the VIP members of the Training Designers Club, when we first started talking about this, is how little respect people give the design time. It isn't something that you fit in around your coaching sessions, around your virtual facilitation, around your daily exercise. We need to actually treat it as something that's important and valid in its own right, and we need to set aside time in our diaries for it. That way, you're not having to have this constant mental switch. Because if you do half an hour here, half an hour there, by the time your brain's got back up to speed, you've lost another half an hour. So we do need to be really quite disciplined in our approach to training design. So that's just 3 tips and 3 ways I think that people do struggle with how long it takes. There are 6 free videos on the website. If you just go to the Training Designers Club website, it's something that we talk about a lot. So I've made 6 videos. They're all about 10 minutes long. They're completely free. And if you just go onto the website and look on this is actually on the blog page, scroll down 5 or 6 blogs and you'll find them all there. So, and each video has got a different tip for being more efficient with your training design. Second part of time is, how do we fit everything in? So I can't see everybody on the screen. I can see a few of you. So I'll go back to chat and just give me a yes or no. Have you ever been asked to condense a 1-day workshop into a 2-hour session? Just give me a quick yes or no in the chat. Oh, Jean, no, you're the lucky one. Yeah, I mean, how does that make you feel when someone says, oh yeah, well, I know we used to do this over 7-8 hours, but we can do it in 2 hours, can't we? Yeah, really valued, absolutely. Yeah, what you used to do in all that time, it's just condense it down. And I think we've all faced this challenge, to be totally honest with you, and it is very frustrating. And the reason that I think we face this challenge is that our stakeholders, whether that's your client, your senior management team, they don't understand learning and development like we do. So they are labouring under this idea that it's all about the content. But we know, so that go forward, that content is not king. Because if content was king, we would never have run a 1-day workshop in the first place, would we? We would have just done e-learning. We would have recommended books. We would have directed people to YouTube videos. If it was just as simple as giving people content, we wouldn't exist in what we do. So there is a challenge with some sort of stakeholder management there in the first place, but most of us have to find some sort of compromise. If it's just that there's no way we're going to ask people to sit for a whole day on a Zoom session, which is understandable, I totally get that. We do have to meet them halfway and reduce the amount of time, but still cover as much of that content as we can. So here are 3 quick tips for you to do that. The first is to break it down. So if we have the opportunity, instead of turning that 1-day session into a 3-hour session, can we do 3 1-hours? and then have each 1 hour with a distinct focus. And I think that really helps to focus the minds of the people attending, and it can actually make your design easier as well, because you've just got that one session, one focus, one really big, clear learning outcome that allows you to really crystallize what it is you're covering. The second tip is the 80-20 rule. And this is so important. If you're totally honest, when you look at your workshop, chances are 20% of the content are going to deliver 80% of the value. So that's your must-have content. That's where you absolutely cannot miss this out. The rest of your content, it's not that it doesn't add value, but it's supplementary, it's contextual, it's enhancing, it's another perspective of the same sort of thing. So, and that's obviously, it's there for a reason, it's there because it adds value, but the real kernel of the value we can probably pick out using the 80-20 rule. So that again is what we need to build our session around. And the final tip, which I always share with people, is to share responsibility with delegates. They are all grown-ups. They don't need to be spoon-fed every step of the way, but they do need to be signposted and guided. So maybe when we've used that 80-20 rule, we say, well, this is the 20% that absolutely has to be covered in the session. Maybe some of that other content can be done by directing them to videos, suggesting some self-study, either before or after the event, particularly if you're having to make assumptions about where you're going with your content. So it may be, well, we have to assume that they know what the process is of our performance management system. So that is something that we can do as independent learning in advance. And then I'm starting assuming that they know that. And if they don't, that's kind of down to them. Likewise, we can have some follow-up material for those who are interested and want to have more of a stretch, which is exactly what I'm doing in this webinar. I'm trying to give you the key, the top line of many different things. And if you want a deeper dive, you can go and get that from the website. Which brings me to this, on the website, this is new, there are 50 top tip videos, not just about virtual training design, about training design in general, but the principles tend to apply regardless of your medium. So if you want to access 50 top tip videos, you can do that. If you're a VIP member, they're free in the members area. So otherwise you can find them on the resources page. And if you want to really take this by the scruff of the neck and really get into detail with it all, I am running a Designing for Digital Delivery program starting on the 25th, which is a Thursday, which runs for 5 weeks, 5 90-minute live sessions. Again, it's on the website. If you just look under how to design training, you'll find that there. The second challenge we have, because we've only done one, time had 2 parts to it, is tools and tech. And it's unsurprising that this is a big challenge to us as we've switched from flip charts and post-it notes to cameras and laptops and all the other things. And as designers, even if you're not the deliverer, we do have to give it some proper consideration as to which tools and tech to use. So again, in the chat, how do you decide what you're going to include in your virtual training sessions? Oh, Scott, that's a great one. Which outcome would you like to drop? That's a great one. Yeah, when we're trying to cut the design time. I didn't see that. I have to switch the chat off when I'm talking, otherwise I get distracted. Okay. Focus on the learning objectives. Thanks, Gina. This is a bigger question, so it's taking you longer to answer. Oh, that's a great one, Alison. What the client has access to. That's very important consideration, isn't it? Yeah, what's available. Yeah, Rachel. Adding a little bit of variety. Our IT blocks everything. I know. I think IT departments must have a real hatred of trainers sometimes because everything just gets blocked by firewalls. Consider the audience and size. That's a great one, Emma. Yeah, their competence. So how competent are they in the tech? That's a brilliant point, Leo. Jasmine, pleased to hear it. You keep your tech very simple. Accessibility, that's brilliant. Yes, Scott, I do think people are starting to use flip charts more. If I had space, I would have a flip chart going on right here. Considering the delegates, access, engagement, yeah. So there's lots and lots of different things that we need to take into account when we're deciding which tools and tech to use. But there's so much out there, isn't there? It can be quite difficult. It can actually be quite overwhelming trying to work out, what there is available to you, how it works and how you can use it. And particularly if you're not designing for yourself to deliver, you've got to think about other people's access to these tools as well. So there's lots and lots of things to take into account. And because it can be quite overwhelming, our last Lunch and Learn in the Training Designers Club, we actually explored 4 different tools, just so that we could get a feel for them and decided, if that's something that we want to use in our own training sessions. So again, VIP members, that's available for you, or you can get that on the resources if you want to look at it. We explored Padlet, Quizlet, Kanban Flow and Deck Hive. They were 4 that we looked at, and we're going to be doing it again, I think in April. Going to be having a look at another 4. But some great points came out in the chat and echoing some of my tips for using your tools. Absolutely right. So many of you put this in the chat. You should use the tool to support the learning, not the other way around. L&D people can be a little bit magpie-ish at times, and we do get distracted by the latest shiny object, particularly if we've got a little bit bored with something that we use over and over. So we think, oh, that looks cool, that looks great. Oh, how much fun, let's build that into my session, rather than it being the other way around. And the minute we start following the tech rather than following the learning objectives, we start to veer away from the great value that we're hoping to add. So it can lead us down a wrong path. I'm delighted to see, I think it was Emma put in the chat, always go for the simplest tool for the job, for so many reasons. For one, as a facilitator, you've got enough to think about. I've got one tiny screen here and I'm looking at the chat, I'm looking at the people, I'm looking at my slides. And when you're trying to facilitate discussions and manage chat, the last thing you want to be worrying about is this add-on tool doing what it should do. People can't get into it. So it's a lot of hassle for you, but equally, again, as many of you mentioned in the chat, it can be quite complicated for our delegates if they're not used to using this tech. Or here's the other thing to consider, if they're joining on their phones, as a lot of people do. So the simpler the tool, the more likely it is people are going to be able to engage with it in some way. And the last thing to think about is don't compare yourself to what other people are doing. Okay, we can all see these people who have got a setup like the BBC, and we can feel that we're perhaps a little bit inadequate. No, but we're not comparing apples with apples. Always remember that you or your facilitator brings the magic to the sessions. It's not the fancy tech. Just as it was never how neat your flip charts were. That's not what it was all about. It was about those real great aha moments that you created through facilitating your session. And the exact same things apply when you're designing and delivering a virtual session. So remember, we don't all need the full Starship Enterprise. Some people do. There are a small number of people, say, who are international speakers, speaking to global audiences, charging £5,000 a day. Let them get on with it. Most of us aren't like that. Most of us are working with smallish groups in a facilitated live session, often with people that we know. So please don't think that you've got to spend thousands of pounds on tech unless you're working with that very specific niche. Don't try and run before you can walk. I was working with one of the VIPs one-on-one yesterday, and she said, I feel like I ought to be putting in more complicated stuff. And I went, no, let everybody get comfortable with this first. And when everybody's comfortable with this, because she's got 8 sessions with them, what we can do is you can introduce something new, perhaps every 3rd or 4th. So everyone gets comfortable, and then everyone can take that journey together, including you, and you'll always have that backup option as well. And remember that engaging training doesn't have to mean complicated training. Another free resource for you on the website is 12 ways to bring virtual training to life without being a technical genius or spending any money, or using any external apps whatsoever. So there's 12 ways that I can think of that you can use just within Zoom to get people engaged. And again, that's just free on the resources page of the website. Finally, our last challenge, oh my goodness me, where's the time gone? I'm running just about 3 minutes late, is transfer. So transfer is always been a challenge, whether you are running a virtual session or a face-to-face session. But when we're running virtual sessions, we kind of feel one step removed, I think, from delegates. So it feels that we have to work harder for it, which is exactly why it has to be built in. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever attended a session or watched something that was actually quite engaging, but didn't have any impact on you whatsoever. I know that this may be that thing for you. I don't know, but we've all attended those things that were quite enjoyable. And to be honest, I feel that way every time I watch anything by the lovely Professor Brian Cox. I always find him very engaging, and I can actually understand what he's telling me when he's telling it, usually that we're all going to die. But the fact is that I don't understand it at a deep enough level to sort of remember it 6 months down the line. So engaging content isn't enough. We do need to make it meaningful to people, and to do that, it needs to be personalised, practical, and of course, people need to feel motivated to do something as a result, which has always been the case. That's not unique to virtual training. So how do we do that when we're feeling one step removed? The answer, as far as I'm concerned, is to apply accelerated learning principles, which we do, which is good practice anyway. It's not something that's, again, limited to virtual. We did run a specific lunch and learn on this. Again, it's on the website, and it's included in the downloadable how-to guides on the website, and it is a thread through that Designing for Digital Delivery program. It is something that needs to be woven through. But what tips can I give you today to apply those accelerated learning principles? 3 ways. The first is to make it real and personal. So don't focus on theories and concepts and abstract ideas. Get to the point as quickly as you can. Really make it relevant to people's lives, to their specific situations, to their specific challenges, and speak their language, because that is going to shortcut that training design process, that training transfer process, sorry. We need to make sure that we build in time for exploration. Again, this links back to the earlier slide where it's not all about the content. People need to uncover learning for themselves, and they only do that when they have time to think about it, to reflect, to talk about it with other people, and to really discover things for themselves and work out exactly what it means in their situation. So that needs to be built in. And the final thing is to mix it up, which may seem like in contradiction to what I was just telling you about not using too many tools. What I mean by mix it up is to vary your medium. So if that's varying the voice, so maybe you're the main presenter or your facilitator is, but then there's a video, so there's another voice in there. It's about having really engaging visual aids, so people respond well to pictures and diagrams. It's about taking your slides down for a bit and letting people just see each other's faces. So all these different ways, creating multiple ways into the learning. So we're coming at it from more than one angle and in more than one way. And that's, I think, Scott, you mentioned about using the flip chart. Switching to a flip chart can be a great way to refocus people and help people to think about it in lots of different ways. So in summary, this is one of my favorite quotes: computers are to design as microwaves are to cooking. Your tech does not make a great training session. You do that, and you do that by designing it well in the first place with all of these great principles in mind. So in summary, not doing too bad. Keep it simple without it being boring. Okay, that's the first thing. Fancy tools will not replace great conversations and good facilitation. You don't need to be using Mural or things where people need to have logins or all these separate things happening. Your conversations and facilitation is where that great learning still happens. If you focus on your delegates and your learning outcomes rather than tech, so always keep that in mind and make the tech fit, not the other way around. And please, please, please follow a proper design process. It will make it so much easier for you, and it will make sure that all of these good principles are woven in throughout rather than added as afterthoughts. And if you do all of those things, the rest will fall into place. Now, if you want any more, I've mentioned it a number of times, there's the website. So there's lots of free and low cost resources on there. And if you want to join the Designing for Digital Delivery program, which starts on the 25th of February, you can do that. And just one other thing that I meant to mention around the tools and not getting too worried about the tech is my friend and fellow VIP member, Leanne Davies, is running a session on she calls them liberating structures. So it's a completely non-tech way of engaging people in virtual training. And she's running that, I think, on the 26th of February. So what I'll do in the replay, I'll add a link to that if you're interested. And I'll also add a link to all of these things as well. So obviously VIP members get these, a lot of these resources for free, and they get the course at half price as well. So, such a lot to think about. I hope I've given you some fresh ideas and just reassured you on other matters that you are doing the right thing, and just follow that process, keep it simple, keep focused on your delegates, just be organized and methodical and enjoy it, enjoy your virtual training. So with that, I'm going to finish. If you need to dash off, because I am a couple of minutes over, thank you so much for your attention. I'll be sending the replay out probably tomorrow. If you want to stay on and ask any questions, you're very welcome to do that. I'm more than happy to stay on for 15 minutes or so. Thank you very much.